Welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. It is Monday, April 10th, 2023. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I just went live on TikTok for about 10 minutes, a little bit of a pregame. Let's go ahead and get our party started. We do not have my partner in crime this week, Phillip Fox, traveling back from Florida today. He is either on a plane or at an airport right now. So the good news is we get our producer, Anthony Weiner, out from behind the scenes. Still has to do his producer duties. Still gives himself walk-up music. Anthony, I know you're always excited to get on this side of the camera.
Oh, absolutely. Talking about football is almost as much fun as watching it. So it's good to be here talking with you. You're so knowledgeable that if I'm wrong about something, you can back up why. And I really like having a conversation about football with you. So it's cool.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that the notes feature something from the Lions today, being that you are getting
it's good news, Brian. It's good news.
It is good news. There's a lot of good news about the Lions. Let's bring in our regular Monday co-host now, Jimmy Ray from Twitter's NFL Stats. Oh, got to get the stretch. That's right. Get the triceps. You should have been warmed up before the show. Why are you waiting until you go on the field to do your stretches?
I wanted to do it for the walk-up music.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's stretching? Yeah. You should be flexing. I don't know. I think you got that backwards, man.
I don't know. It felt right. It felt right.
It needs some work, but that's all right. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I went disc golfing today. It's nice outside here in Indiana again, so I went on a little run too afterwards. I'm feeling good, dude. This is my peak season. It's the summer, even though the NFL season's in the fall.
I did some mini golf today. My son is on spring break. And today is going to be the warmest day of the week here in the Bay Area, so we went and I crushed him. He's 9, but I don't care. I beat him by 6.
You have to.
I have to. I mean, I don't want to take it easy on him. He's ultra competitive. He doesn't take it easy on me. Why should I return the favor?
Right. Exactly.
So what do you guys say? We got some legit headlines. We got a really fun topic. I wanted to bring back the 11 Yards podcast, at least for this episode. So we're going to actually dive into some stats, some NFL draft prospect stats, and I'm just going to let you two guys run it. I did not bring any stats. You two guys are going to run it, and I'm just going to kind of be here for the party. That'll be our main topic today. But let's go ahead and jump, as we always do, into our legit headlines. These are our headlines from the Legit Football newsletter that stood out that we want to discuss. And of course, there's one that we have to start with. Big news broke yesterday, Easter Sunday, with the signing of Odell Beckham Jr. Guys, did he go to the Dallas Cowboys?
No.
No. Did he go to the New York Jets?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
No, he went to the Baltimore Ravens, a team that currently doesn't have a quarterback situation squared away. Signed a deal worth up to $18 million with $15 million guaranteed. This is a wide receiver who is on the other side of 30, coming off his second ACL injury, and hasn't played football in over a season. Jimmy, I'll start with you on this. I think there's a particular reason behind the numbers and behind this signing, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on OBJ with the Ravens.
It caught me off guard, honestly. I felt like, the Ravens, I think it makes sense if Lamar is there, right? And
yes, exactly.
I think everybody saw that and was like, oh, that'll go to Lamar. But it's also interesting that he spent $15 million guaranteed on him. Obviously, the biggest contract this season was Allen Lazard in the offseason, getting $11 million per year, but that's obviously was a 4-year contract. So this is a 1-year deal. So he's not on the books for too long. It's definitely interesting, though, when you have Lamar and OBJ already talking to each other on Instagram, things like that. But I think OBJ can still be a number one, especially on a team like the Ravens that doesn't have a true number one at all. They need a wide receiver, and they got a risky little bet there, but it could pay off huge.
Well, that's the key, is the risk there, Anthony, in that when he's at his best, he's worth $15 million a year. He's worth $18 million a year.
Absolutely.
But this is a guy who has not been able to stay healthy. He is now, as I mentioned, he's in great shape. We all saw his private workout, but he's on the other side of 30. That's typically when we start to see a slowdown from the physical side of wide receivers. And yes, Jimmy, you're right. He automatically becomes far and away the best weapon outside of Mark Andrews for that Ravens team. But there's such an inherent risk there. There's really, in my mind, Anthony, this only works if Lamar comes back, right?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And especially with the wide receiver situation that they have. They're on a struggle bus, and it's labeled wide receivers, and they're starting to slow down. The mileage is low. And so they're going to get a new engine. Even if they have that new engine for a year, it can take you somewhere.
Is
And
the
I think
struggle
that's-
bus like the short bus? Is it like, is it
Yes.
kind of the same, right? It only fits
Right.
like 20 people or whatever.
Exactly. And now you have a brand new engine that could take you places, and the engine's named OBJ. Everyone calls him OBJ. I call him O Reliable because he's a wide receiver that you can always rely on. Stafford.
Can you rely on him though
Well,
if he does if he
if
gets
he's healthy.
injured and isn't on the field?
You can rely on him at peak performance. If he gets injured, obviously the ACL thing was just awful for his career and for the Rams. But now he's back, and I think that he could come back even better than he was. And I think that's kind of a risk that Baltimore decided to take, and now we can see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I want to dive into this a little bit more. Like, what if Lamar doesn't sign? Which, hey, Jimmy, you mentioned there were images on Instagram of the two of them like chatting, and apparently Lamar was encouraging the Ravens to sign OBJ and was somehow involved. I don't know if he was, actually negotiating or anything, but he seems to have some connection with this deal happening. But what if he doesn't? And then what? Tyler Huntley is throwing to 30-year-old OBJ.
Let's get one thing straight here. If Lamar Jackson doesn't come back to the Ravens, this isn't a good move for the Ravens, and I don't think the Ravens could have made a good move to make them any sort of contenders next season without Lamar. I think Lamar is basically the entire team right now, and for the past ever since he's been drafted, he's been the guy. He's been the guy that's led to the Ravens to the playoffs despite kind of all the misses and things like that. But I mean, there's not many moves that you could make if you don't have Lamar. I think Lamar is the biggest piece here. I don't know how big of a change this kind of makes his whole contract situation, but maybe a little. It definitely doesn't hurt.
Well, maybe one of the complaints is he never really had a bevy of wide receivers, and now he's got the wide receiver. Hey, Kevin's in the chat. So he is at the airport. What's up, Kevin? Still makes the show from the chat even when he is traveling. One more point on the OBJ thing, guys. Connor Hughes wrote that OBJ called the Jets and gave them a chance to match the offer that he got from the Ravens, and the Jets declined. With Armand in the chat, I'd love to hear your thoughts as a Jets fan. We know that he was on the wish list or ransom letter that Rodgers gave the Jets. Is there any impact there on the Rodgers side with the fact that the Jets did not match and did not bring OBJ in, or is that just like, hey, they know better than to spend $18 million on a wide receiver when they already have great wide receivers and they're about to have to pay Rodgers?
I always say if something's broken, don't fix it. And adding OBJ would have been unnecessary money that they're trying to use to pay Rodgers. So I think that would have set them back. He would have looked good in a Jets uniform, not going to lie, but I think that Odell's
there was a lot of those, how these people on Twitter, they come up with the graphics, and he did look good in number 13 in Gang Green. I'll say that. So Kevin says OBJ to the Ravens, thumbs up. OBJ price point, thumbs down. Yeah, the last point I want to make in this is to me, this price only makes sense if it gets you Lamar. Like, to me, this doesn't seem like a Ravens-esque move unless it's tied to Lamar Jackson. So if we end up seeing that Lamar has signed his tender and he's going to come back and play on the tag, or they agree to whatever deal it gets him back to the table, either way, then I can look at this and say, okay, $15 million a year. Rashad Bateman coming back from injury. You still have Mark Andrews. J.K. Dobbins, one extra year removed from his injury. Suddenly and Lamar is at quarterback. Okay, the Ravens are gonna go places. But if he doesn't, this signing will look a lot different. Let's go ahead and move over to the NFC. The Philadelphia Eagles, more likely to take a running back at number 27 than at number 10. Reminder, the Eagles have 2 first-round picks, including the pick from the Saints. This is from The Athletic's Zach Berman. He thinks selecting a running back with the 10th pick is, quote, probably a bridge too far for the Eagles. You guys, remember when I took over as GM and moved Howie Roseman to the side? I went ahead and made that pick for Bijan at 10. Zach Berman thinking that's a little bit too high, but he does think that number 27 could be a spot. Highly, highly doubt that Bijan is available at that point. So Berman actually links Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Alabama, to the Eagles at 27. Anthony, your thoughts on the Eagles and taking a first-round running back, and if they do, should it be at 10 or 27?
There's a hit or miss when it comes to first-round running backs, and last year Kenneth Walker proved a hit. And I think that they can get kind of like a Kenneth Walker, who was the third string. If it wasn't for Penny and Carson, what happened there, he would have never started. I mean, he kind of proved himself at that level, how good he can be as a first-round running back. And I think that if you can find somebody just like him, he can be that guy on your team and be a Kenneth Walker. And I think Kenneth really put it out there that said, hey, running backs can be good as rookies, and he kind of proved that. I mean, Breece Hall is a name I could put out there too. Philadelphia was ranked 5th in rushing, so they had no issues with the run game, but then they lost some guys. And I think a replacement that they can have for the next 5 years would be better than, say, bringing like a veteran running back in, signing like a Derrick Henry.
Well, they have Rashad Penny now, which is, some people like him. I think Kevin has been on the record saying that he actually really likes the signing of Penny. I love Penny's talent, Jimmy. I don't love his durability. He's missed more than half of the games as a pro, even though he's a former first-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, what's the best ability? We all know it. It's availability, right? So if you're not playing games and you're not showing out, you're not providing impact to your team. But Rashad Penny, I think he's a kind of a low-risk, high-reward situation for the Eagles, which is what they're hoping for. But drafting a running back at number 10 as a whole, I can see the Eagles trading down from 10 and drafting. Yeah. See, number 10 is just, it seems too high to draft a running back. Especially, I mean, we've seen it in the past, and it's kind of worked out in some ways. I mean, the quality players is just how big of an impact are they actually making on the team and the success of the team.
Well, here's how I look at it too. This particular draft, it's not full. It's not deep at a lot of positions. It's really at cornerback. Yeah. That's one of the places the Eagles don't necessarily need somebody because they got Slay and Bradbury back. Running back, another deep position, and tight end. Of those 3 positions where this draft is deepest, the Eagles could use running back, right?
Yeah.
What else are you going to do at 10? I actually don't hate the trade back mention, Armand, because that could be a possibility. You could trade back and still get Bijan, if you don't go past maybe like the top 15. But what else are you going to spend that pick on? They've been mocked a lot to defensive interior. They lost Javon Hargrave. Sure, that's big, but they still have a pretty deep front 7. Safety is a big need for them, but there's no safety worth picking at number 10. So the more I think about it, why not just take that pick? It's a luxury pick. You still have another first-round pick. Why not draft a generational running back who is going to make your offense darn near unstoppable? I know it's rich. I know it's high for a running back, but man, when you're a team like the Eagles, you can afford to take a luxury pick there.
Yeah, at least, I mean, if you're looking at it just for this season, too, it seems like a good pick to pick a running back. But if you're looking further down the line, I feel like you never know who you're going to miss or lose throughout the rest of the next couple seasons. So you might want to. I think trading back could be a positive impact. You're picking just best player available kind of thing. You don't even necessarily need the guy.
And this is a team who was this close to winning the Super Bowl. I do think they're concerned about this year. This is not a team who's on a multi-year rebuild. They have a championship window, and they should be looking for pieces that just help them get over that hump, right? They did not run the ball very well. They didn't run the ball much at all. They didn't really try to run against the Chiefs, but when they did, they didn't have success. Imagine if they had Bijan in that Super Bowl, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, the run game was slow, and that proved low for them. That was a deciding factor on how Kansas City was really able to win that game, because it was very close. It was 50-50 at the end, and it could have been anybody's game. And you're absolutely right. That run game could have been the deciding factor. And I think Bijan Robinson would have been that deciding factor. So it's up to them now. Do they want Robinson to have that position to bring them to where they want to be? And I think trading down would be a smart move for the Eagles, and they can afford it.
Yeah, with Howie Roseman's past, I think he'll just end up trading it and then end up with another first round next year, and he'll just keep doing that until he gets who he wants.
It's worked so far.
Yeah.
Taking them to 2 Super Bowls with 2 different head coaches and 2 different quarterbacks. So Howie's doing something right in Philadelphia. We're going to keep talking about draft stuff. It is draft month. It is draft season, as they say. Let's go to Minnesota. Houston wide receiver Tank Dell, who I'll go ahead and put it out there. He's a guy for me. He's a guy on my radar for fantasy. Really liking Tank Dell. Really curious to see where he ends up. Signed. Yeah. I'm honest, it's when you have a public show about the NFL, your opinions are going to get out there. But Tank Dell, named a fit for the Minnesota Vikings. The Athletic's Nick Baumgardner thinks Dell would be an excellent slot receiver for the Vikings. Dell is 5'8", 165, which, guys, is honestly the size of a lot of the guys in this draft. It's a very kind of slot wide receiver heavy draft on the wide receiver market. But even at that size, he caught 109 passes for nearly 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns in one season. Everybody knew he's getting the ball. Didn't matter. He still was able to produce. He also absolutely lit up the Senior Bowl. That's how he got on my radar. That production is more receptions, yards, and touchdowns than any of the receiver prospects expected to go in the first round. Draft analyst Lance Zierlein writes that Dell is a, quote, touchdown-making machine who pairs electrifying top-end speed with twitchy short area quickness. His routes are fast and effective on all 3 levels with keen ball-tracking talent, deep and sideline dotting footwork. Jimmy, do you like this fit for Minnesota? Do you have any opinions on Tank Dell in general?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds. I mean, you said over 100 catches. I mean, those stats were insane. And the Vikings, they could definitely use a wide receiver with the loss of Adam Thielen this upcoming offseason to Carolina. Do they really trust KJ Osborne and Jalen Reagor? I don't know if he's available for him. I could see them taking a shot, and I think it could be worthwhile with all the production he's gotten in college. So,
yeah, I think with Justin Jefferson, you're looking for that. KJ Osborne had a great year, but you could use a slot guy. You could use a guy manning the middle of the field. They could put Justin Jefferson anywhere. KJ Osborne, I think, could be a good number 2, but you always want more weapons. You have TJ Hawkinson now at tight end. This is probably going to be Kirk's last year, I would assume, in Minnesota. So why not get him an extra weapon? Anthony, any thoughts as an NFC North guy?
I think that their receiving room was good, and now Thielen left, and so now you don't have much to replace. He was getting older. He wasn't as productive as he was when he was in his prime. So replacing that with a younger slot receiver like Tank Dell, I think is probably an upgrade to that spot that they're trying to, in quotes, fill. And I think that the Vikings can benefit from that because it's looking like Kirk Cousins is probably not done yet. And I think that I think he has some business to take care of, and he's going to take care of that with younger guys.
Any guy who is 5'8", 165, and goes by the name Tank is okay in my book. Anthony, let's stick in the NFC North. I will obviously let you get this one first. There is buzz growing around the Detroit Lions and Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Multiple reports indicate that the Lions will strongly consider taking Carter with the number 6 overall pick. While some teams have removed Carter from their draft board over character concerns, the Lions believe they have a strong enough locker room / team culture to support the troubled 22-year-old. Carter recently pled no contest to misdemeanor charges of reckless driving and racing in connection with a car crash that killed 2 people. And he recently had a pro day where he showed up out of shape, couldn't finish the drills, was like 8 pounds, weighed 8 pounds more than he did at the combine. Not a good look all the way around, but his talent is undeniable. A lot of draft analysts think he is the most talented, possibly the most talented player overall in this draft. Anthony, how do you feel about him going to Detroit at 6?
So I have mixed feelings about this one. I have thought about this a lot. I'll just be sitting on the couch playing the new baseball game, and I'll just be thinking, could Jalen Carter be the toxicity that the Lions locker room doesn't need?
I love the image of Anthony playing a baseball video game while thinking about the Detroit Lions. It's beautiful.
There's a jersey that's hanging right next to my baseball jersey, so it's like I have to switch between the two. So I know Jalen Carter has character concerns, but how relevant are those concerns when it comes to football? How relevant is his character to his performance? And in my mind, a lot. I say maybe 75-25, because I think that's very important, that you're a character off of the field as well as on the field. Wrong place at the wrong time.
And to be perfectly honest, too, work ethic. Is one thing if you're you've got you're a 22-year-old kid and you're making mistakes. That's one thing. Although this is a hell of a mistake, it resulted in multiple people dying. But showing up to your pro day out of shape, your pro day, that is your time to show off and not even be able to finish the drills. That is a bigger red flag than the character.
Yeah, and Jalen Carter he's probably taking flights to visit these teams first class, and he's like, I've earned this. This is my treatment. I played well, so I get to be treated well. Yet there are players who aren't involved with the police, who aren't having these character concerns, sitting in coach to go fly to these organizations to try to get picked in the draft. And Jalen Carter's saying, they're like, I'm going to get picked. It doesn't matter. He even refused to meet with some teams because he said
anybody outside of the top 10, he's refusing to meet with.
And I don't want that in Detroit. And I don't think anybody wants that in Detroit. I don't even think Brad Holmes is going to want that in Detroit. Dan Campbell did meet with him, and he did say he was interesting. He didn't say good. He didn't say bad. He used the word interesting. I don't know how to take that. I kind of wish he would have elaborated more. I kind of want to go ask him myself.
You go to a job interview and they're like, oh, what'd you think of the candidate? He was interesting. That's not a good sign.
You don't know how to take that. So take Jalen Carter. He performs well. Rookie of the year. Good. That's great. That's amazing for the team. But what's that going to look like in the locker room? How's that going to reflect on the other rookies, the other members of this draft class that could have been, and where Jalen Carter's sitting here as a would have been? And I think that the Lions can avoid that kind of just that kind of guy. I don't like that. He refuses to. He's kind of like arrogant, kind of. I know he was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's what he's claiming with the whole accident thing.
He chose to race. There's a little bit of he chose to be at that place at that time.
That is true. So, yeah, he's young. Kids make mistakes. But at the same time, you knew that the draft was coming up. You knew that the scouting combine was coming up. You knew that you were going to be drafted. So why go make a mistake like that? I just don't want that kind of guy in the Lions locker room.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not ready to make preparations, some of the biggest part of the NFL is making preparations for teams in advance. And if you're not ready or able to make preparations for your pro day, something you've been training for basically your whole life, right? I mean, you'll get chances and visits and stuff.
Yeah, you only get one pro day.
Yeah, you only get one pro day. But I do think that the Lions have a strong staff with Dan Campbell and everybody, and their culture is definitely improving throughout each season with him as head coach. So that'll be very interesting. But hey, if you do draft him and it works out, I mean, he could be a home run hit, just like you were. Yeah. I'm sure you were hitting in the show when you were playing, right?
Oh, look at that! Brought it around to the baseball.
That's all it takes.
Well done, Jimmy. Anthony, before we move on to the main topic, what do you want the Lions to do at number 6?
That sounds like an entire episode.
Okay. And we will dive into it again, but just quick, give us a bird's eye view.
Trade up to take Arizona's pick and draft Will Anderson.
Well, you mean Anthony? You just combined two quarterbacks. There's Will Levis and there's
Will Anderson.
Will Anderson. No, the defensive.
The
really?
Linebacker. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will Anderson, edge.
I just don't know if we can depend on Alexander Zaloni and Okwara. Yes, they're good, but they're not great. And I think if we pair him with Aiden Hutchinson, that can be a very dominant pass rush, and I think that would be great.
Interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our...
Gotta find the button.
There you go. Takes even longer when he's also on the show. So I mentioned at the top of the show, today's main topic is NFL Draft Stats That Pop. We've got Jimmy Rayon, owner of the NFL Stats Twitter account. We've got Anthony Weiner, our producer, who together, they used to host, and maybe will again, the 11 Yards podcast right here on the Legit Football channel. So I thought this could be, with Kevin out, a kind of revisit of the 11 yards. Let's let you two guys bring some stats that pop to you, whether they're prospect stats or team stats. I'll just kind of be here for the ride, moderate, maybe give some opinions. But I'm going to give Jimmy the floor first as our resident stats expert. I mean, hey, you're the stats guy. We got a stats episode.
Right.
We got to turn it over to you.
Yeah.
So own it, man.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, so I was going through and just getting some stats from some players I wanted to highlight. We've probably already talked about some of these players before. You guys know them. There's a couple you might not know that I threw in there, but I'll start with Georgia edge rusher Nolan Smith. I found an interesting stat about him. Edge rushers, they're usually a little bigger. He's 238 pounds, which is one of the lighter sides of the draft. To note, 2017 was the last time someone was that light. Hassan Reddick, who did turn out pretty well. Before that, Huey Richardson of the Steelers, 1991, who was 238 pounds as well. So it's interesting to see him that light, play that light, and we'll kind of see how it translates to the NFL. But I will say that him being that light led him to be the fastest edge rusher in the combine with a 4.39 40, and then he was able to jump 41.5 inches, which was also the best out of any other edge rusher. So I just thought that was an interesting stat when you're looking at Nolan Smith coming out of Georgia and who's going to draft him and kind of how he plays.
So the other guy's name was Huey?
Huey, yeah.
Maybe also the last time a Huey was a prominent NFL player.
Man,
but
what a name. I love it.
Gotta love it. Absolutely love that. Nolan Smith definitely is an intriguing prospect. Wasn't really on my radar much until his insane combine. He is a smaller guy, but man, what an athlete. I do think a team can utilize him. I do think he'll go a lot higher than he would have had he not had those kind of numbers. Anthony, what's an NFL draft stat that pops?
So I'm going to bring up the Lions again because they are meeting with Hendon Hooker of Tennessee. And there's one thing that really popped out to me, and that was his touchdown interception ratio. In his career in Virginia Tech and Tennessee combined, he threw for 80 touchdowns and only threw 12 interceptions. And in a quarterback, that's insanely impressive. Can you do that in the NFL? I don't know, because here's the thing. College defenses are different. So it's really hard to compare college stats with what could be pro stats because of those defenses. You know, you're not going up against a Darius Slay or a Aaron Donald. You know, you don't have that kind of pressure that you would in the NFL. But I found this interesting because I did the research, and Hendon Hooker single-handedly got more pass yards last season than the Giants, the Rams, the Ravens, the Panthers, the Titans, the Falcons, or the Bears. Like I said, college defenses are different, so it's really hard to compare. But I found that interesting because, yeah, he did throw for more yards than those quarterbacks did in the NFL. Can he be the next guy to go out, like the next Aaron Rodgers?
The next Jared Goff? Aaron Rodgers. Oh, wow.
Aaron Rodgers
the same spectrum, right?
He just doesn't throw interceptions. And I think that Hendon Hooker, he's always able to find the receiver. And even if he doesn't, he's not throwing it to the other team. And the reason why I brought up the Lions is because they are meeting with him. And there's talks that they might pick him at 16. And I can't lie, I'm kind of on board with that.
Oh, look at that. Mr. Jared Goff defender. Okay.
I wasn't ready for that.
To a podcast while I was at work this morning. I'm not going to name the podcast because they're very big. And
conflict of interest.
So, exactly.
Our competitor, just like us.
I'm sure we're doing similar numbers.
Yeah, it's a whole show. But Hendon Hooker was on, and I listened to him talk, and I listened to him answer questions. I like the guy. So I'm on board with him being a backup quarterback with room for development. Jared Goff is a veteran. He can develop him. And then when Jared Goff's gone, Hendon Hooker can take his place. I like it. I can't believe I'm saying this because I've been defending Jared Goff all offseason. So I can't believe I'm saying this. But if they draft Hendon Hooker in the first round, I will jump up and down and clap my hands because I will be excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, here. Brian, you want to go ahead because I got some stuff to say.
I was just going to mention specifically with regards to Hendon Hooker, the thing that I'm most interested to see from a development standpoint is doesn't have to do with the defenses he's faced. He played in the SEC. He played some of the best defenses in college football. It's the offense that he ran it's very, very simplistic and advantageous to where he didn't have to make a lot of reads. I've heard some. I'll throw some stats that I heard, and I don't have the exact stat, but he only had to go to his second progression like 17 times during the whole season. 17 times, because the way that offense is set up, it just leaves guys wide open. It makes it. This is a lot of analysts are having trouble really diving deep on all of the prospects from this Tennessee offense. So you mean Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, and Hendon Hooker, because this offense was just so, I don't want to say video game easy, but kind of. Jalen Hyatt only faced press like 60-something times in the entire year, whereas the average receiver is facing it over 200 times, because that's just how the offense was set up, right? So Hooker, yes, the thing is he's making the right decisions over and over again. He only had 2 interceptions all of 2022, but is he going to be able to do that next level and have a much more complicated offense that he's going to have to learn? Is he going to have to go through multiple progressions? I'm not saying he can't. We haven't seen it yet. We don't have enough data from that offense. That's the thing I'm really paying attention to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you have the ability to get the ball out of your hands and into the receiver's hands, you're at least a decent quarterback. And if you can do that in pro, no matter what offense you're running, if you can get the ball to the receiver, who will most likely catch it at that level, then I think you're considered a good quarterback.
Yeah, being able to read your kind of options and the plays as a whole would be a huge factor into playing as well. But I will say I brought my own stat with Hendon Hooker as well, if you guys don't mind. Now, this guy, Hendon Hooker, I'll compare him to a quarterback that played in college, and I'll let you guys know who it is after the fact. So these are career stats. Hendon Hooker, 632 completions and 944 attempts. The other quarterback, 650 and 945.
Is the other quarterback, real quick, is the other quarterback in the NFL now?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
yes. Hooker, passing yards, 8,974. The other guy, 8,852. Touchdowns to interceptions, Hooker, 80 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, like Anthony said. The other guy, 78 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. This Hooker had more rushing yards. This other quarterback also had probably one of the best college seasons ever, not too long ago. Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
Joe Burrow?
Yeah, Joe Burrow. They have very similar stats. Yeah, I just thought it was very interesting how similar their stats were. I will say Hooker did play 7 more games, so that might throw it all away. But, hey, Joe Burrow did have some pretty good wide receivers that he played with in Jamar and Justin Jefferson. So I just thought that was very interesting when I found that. And I don't know what that says. It could say something, but it could definitely say something if Hooker starts to play well, and I'm sure there'll be comparisons. But
I'll say this, the fact that both you guys came up with Hendon Hooker stats, I think says something. I think everything I'm seeing, he's actually going up draft boards, and that he looks, I don't want to say a lock, but it's looking more and more likely that he will get drafted in the first round. I'm seeing him in a lot of mocks going to Minnesota as the heir apparent to Kirk.
That could, I think I saw that too.
I did see
makes
that
sense.
mock as well.
The Raiders too. I mean, he had visited with the Raiders, so it's not
but the
too
Raiders,
far up.
Right? But the Raiders have just the one pick, and it's
Right.
at 7. So
Yeah.
do you take a quarterback at 7 like
I
Hendon
don't know.
Hooker, whereas the Vikings are in the 20s?
Yeah,
I
that would
think
make
that-
more sense.
Right. So I just kind of like that as a landing spot, because we are going to Kirk Cousins' last season. So I kind of like that.
What about the Bucks? Are the Bucks back there?
The Bucks are back there. The Bucks
Yeah.
are definitely a contender for
That'd be
Hooker as
fun.
well.
I feel
Might
like
turn
they
it in,
have
huh?
they have their guy, they have their rookie, and he's
Who?
not
Trask?
terrible. Yeah, I mean, there's
How do
room
we
for
know he's not
development.
terrible?
They brought
We haven't seen.
Baker.
Yeah, he's not a rookie,
And-
and we haven't seen
Right.
him. We don't know what we're getting out of Trask. He wasn't a great.
They do.
I think they. Right, and they liked him so much that they brought in Baker Mayfield.
When you're
That is
behind
Baker.
Tom Brady,
Baker.
you're not going to get a
That's
chance.
right.
You're behind Tom
I
Brady. You're
I
never gonna-
agree, but then why bring in Baker? You don't bring in a guy like Baker, former number 1 overall pick, if you expect him to be a backup when you don't have a true. And this is enough. They didn't draft Trask in the first round. I believe he was a second-round quarterback. Maybe
it's just one of those. Yeah, I mean, Kyle Trask hasn't played, and I think bringing in a quarterback like that is smart because it's kind of a cheaper option, and you could go with both of them. Who knows who's going to win the job and who's going to actually start? But Baker Mayfield did have a pretty good season last year.
Armand thinks if the Raiders draft a quarterback, they're going to trade up and select Levis or Bryce Young. They'd have to get to number 1 or 2 to get Young. I don't see that happening.
I don't see Young happening, but maybe Levis.
Let's go up and get Will Levis so the Colts can go Richardson. It's fine. Well, it sounds like a plan, Las Vegas Raiders.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I have some CJ Stroud stats that I wanted to bring up.
Let's hear it.
CJ Stroud has climbed the boards. He was slotted to make I didn't think he was going to make top 10. And then after the combine and pro day, now he's supposedly going to get picked first. And that just surprises me because, I mean, have you ever seen an Ohio State quarterback do well? No, you haven't. And so, there's not much coming out of Ohio State.
Justin Fields is still, jury's still out on Fields, but
that's fair.
Yeah, I get your sentiment.
You're absolutely right. And they're always rushing quarterbacks. They're always guys who like to run, and that might be a liability because it's very easy to get hurt in situations like that. Where
Stroud is actually one of his knocks is that he does not run the ball very much, and he's not necessarily mobile. I think it's overblown, and he is more mobile than people think, but he is very much a pocket passer. He is not what you consider a mobile quarterback, at least by today's standards.
Well, I think if you're Carolina, then you would want to pick a CJ Stroud up. I think that's the style of offense that Carolina wants to run, and they're going to get that in CJ Stroud. I think that they're going to pick CJ Stroud there, the very first pick. So I wanted to bring up the stat, the touchdown interception ratio, because I just love that stat because you can't throw interceptions and succeed at the same time. So he threw 85 touchdowns and 12 interceptions for a 182.4 in his career at Ohio State. So that's the only school he went to was Ohio State. He was in one system. So can he go into another system and then stay there? That's the question I want to ask you, Brian. Can he commit to a system like he did in Ohio State and succeed with the 85 touchdown, 12 interception ratio?
So my thoughts on Stroud, from what I've seen and what I've read, is he's a really good fit in like a Shanahan style offense. Quick decision maker, goes through his reads quickly, very accurate. Doesn't necessarily have any extra special, like he really only throws from one arm angle. Doesn't, or at least hasn't really shown a lot of the off platform or out of the pocket prowess that you see nowadays with Mahomes, with Jalen Hurts, any of those. He doesn't necessarily have to be a scrambler, but today's NFL really calls for that kind of mobility. I'm not saying he doesn't have it. We just haven't seen much of it. So I think where he lands is going to be important. I actually would love to see him land in Houston because they are going to bring that Shanahan offense with Ben Skoric, their new offensive coordinator there, who came from the Niners. I think he would be a good fit in there. I'd like to see Carolina take Bryce Young. I don't care about his size. I think he is the most special guy outside of maybe Richardson, but Richardson's special in a potential type of way. Bryce Young, if Bryce Young was 6'2", 220, no one would be talking about anyone for the first overall pick other than Bryce Young. He's that good. The way he runs that offense. This is an Alabama offense that is not filled with star wide receivers as it was for Mac Jones, as it was for Tua, and he still found success. He just has been so good. And if you look at his statistic, his tape, his games, he's very, very, he comes to play even in the games they lose. Stroud has had some stinkers. His best game was against Georgia, was against the best defense. I'll give Stroud that. But Stroud has been up and down. He's had some games where he's had a 50% completion percentage and 50 or 150 yards passing. I'm thinking of the Northwestern game. So that baffles me a little bit. And you mentioned, Anthony, this Ohio State offense. So based on what I've seen, I like Young over Stroud for Carolina at 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think of CJ Stroud? What have you seen? I want to know your thoughts though.
I do really like CJ Stroud. I feel like he's a great playmaker, but I do tend to lean towards Brian, especially for the Carolina Panthers. I do feel like Bryce Young could be the guy in his mind, he's the guy that can make the decisions. He can read past all those options that Brian mentioned that Hendon Hooker can't. I mean, he's the guy that could definitely lead an offense.
I'm not sure Hendon Hooker can't. He just hasn't had to. We literally haven't seen him do it.
Yeah, I mean, which at that point you can't just assume he can. So I'm sure they're going to run him through some drills and his visits and stuff, and kind of see what he's made of. But I think if you're going with the overall leader of an offense, I think Bryce Young is kind of the right answer for number one. But I love C.J. Stroud too. So.
Yeah, I think if you're going for a starter, you need one of those three: Will Levis, Bryce Young, or C.J. Stroud. I don't think anyone other than them three are going to come in and be a starter their rookie year. The other guys, I think, can do better as backups, and that's just because of what Hendon Hooker hasn't had to do. And I really like that point because it kind of shows what college ball can and then translate to pro ball. And I think that if Hendon Hooker doesn't experience that on the daily, it's going to hit him in the face with shock when he has to experience it in pro and doesn't know what to do.
I'll tell you this. I would draft Hooker over Levis.
Oh.
At this point. Just throwing that out there.
He said, oh.
Wow. I am not. Okay. Levis is. There you go. Look, Kevin gets in there. His voice is still here even when he's out. We're going to have every episode from here until the draft is going to be draft related. And of course, even the Monday and Friday after the draft are going to be draft related. So we will have more time to dissect that, but I want to stay on topic here. Jimmy, let's turn to you and get another stat that pops from this draft class.
Let me see. Who do I want? I already did Hooker. We talked about Bijan Robinson. I'll go
taken out of context. If we get a clip of Jimmy saying, I already did Hooker.
We're going to keep it moving. Make that a sound, Anthony.
Yeah, can we clip I already did Hooker for Jimmy? Okay.
Bijan Robinson.
Yo, good. Give me some Bijan love. I like it.
He set the record for the most missed tackles last season in a single season via PFF with 104 last year. I mean, that's absolutely insane. Forced missed tackles, 104. He had 1580 rushing yards, 18 touchdowns. We already kind of talked about him, so we don't need to get too into it. But I will say he has some receiving upside too. He had the third highest average target depth by running back in the Power 5 with 6.8 yards every time he was targeted downfield. So I mean, Bijan Robinson. I mean, he's noted as one of the better running backs to come out since maybe Saquon or even better than that. So people are definitely excited to have him. So he could go to the Eagles. No matter where he goes, I think he'll make a day one impact.
People mentioned Saquon as a comp. I just think he's the last guy that has been that good to be taken high. But I've heard comps of like Edgerrin James and LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah,
and like
LT.
those
I heard LT.
Those are better comps for what he can do as far as just the way he moves, being an all-around back. Saquon was not as polished as a running back as Bijan is coming out. Saquon, sure, it was a physical beast, but Bijan just seems to have everything. And you're right, Jimmy. I like that you brought up his depth of target because this is not a guy who's just catching screen passes. They send him out on routes. I've seen him catch the ball 15 yards down the field on a wheel route. There's just nothing not to like about this guy. So can't wait to draft him 101 in one of my dynasty leagues.
Dude, I'm interested to see where he'll go in our startup dynasty league. I think he could definitely go in the top few rounds for sure.
Oh yeah.
Obviously,
maybe top 2 round. I don't know.
Landing spot is gonna matter a lot for like that kind of thing. Like if he's, we talked about him possibly. I think we talked about last week him landing on the Patriots. Like that would change me, that would give me a little bit of hesitation. But if he lands anywhere where he's just going to be the man for the next 4 to 5 years, then if you do the draft like right now, I think he'll probably go higher than he will go, just because you're taking into account his whole situation, and there's pros and cons to every situation, unless it's the absolutely perfect situation. Which I mean, the Eagles. I think that could be fantasy wise. I think that could be one of the more perfect situations. I know they have a lot of talent though, so that could be I don't care. Put him and Jalen Hurts in the same backfield, please.
They're gonna make another run for the Lombardi.
Anthony, do you have any other stats for us?
No, I'm all out.
All right, Jimmy, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. You can just lightning round us. Just give us some stats, man.
All right, so Northwestern offensive line of Peter Skoronski. I brought him up last time. I think we talked about it. He was the first ever Northwestern player to earn unanimous All-American first-team honors, so that was pretty cool. 93 pass blocking grade, highest in the nation. Allowed only 6 pressures in 480 pass blocking snaps, and I put in parentheses, that is good. So
that is good. Hashtag analysis. That's good.
Yeah. 9'7" broad jump and 34.5 vertical, both second pass. I mean, he's athletic. He has shorter arms apparently, but when you're that athletic, I think you can make those short arms work.
Right.
He's going to be a great left tackle, and left tackle is one of the most important positions that I feel like we don't necessarily talk about enough. So it's definitely interesting. He'll definitely go to a team that'll need him.
I have seen mocks and draft analysts talk about teams may move him to guard because of those short arms, but that they're convinced he's going to be a starter and a stud no matter what position they put him at.
That's fair, because if you're a left tackle, you need that wide range to reach out to the left side and grab those edge rushers when you need to. There's a lot more room that you'll be blocking, so a guard definitely makes sense. If he wants to play left tackle, though, he'll make a lot more money. That's for sure, at least guaranteed wise. All right, I guess I'm still going.
Go. Floor is yours, my friend.
Penn State quarterback. All right, cornerback Joey Porter. He forced an incompletion. Yeah, junior. Thank you.
Important distinction. His dad played longtime Steeler.
Absolutely. He forced an incompletion on 40% of his attempts thrown his way. I did note that he's better in man coverage than he is in zone coverage. He's only averages 7.8 yards per reception when he plays in man coverage versus 12.2 in zone. But he led up a 91.4 quarterback rating in zone and 56.9 quarterback rating in man coverage. So, but he'll definitely play press when you need to. I think it just kind of depends on what kind of defense he goes to and what kind of scheme they'll be able to play him in. But if he plays to his ability and gets better throughout his season, I think he could be definitely a top pick.
I've seen some mocks have Pittsburgh taking him and going to play where his dad did. Yeah,
that'd be a fun story. They've been running with that
would be
for a couple
cool.
years.
I like that.
I heard that he's a fairly physical corner, likes to get up in there, and he's not one of those guys who's afraid to hit, not afraid to tackle.
113 tackles. He only had one interception though in 4 seasons, so that's
that makes sense. Man DB is also less likely to get interceptions because they're facing their man instead of the quarterback.
Right.
But you have to be able to tackle in today's NFL with all the run after the catch guys, the offenses that are designed to get guys yak. You need a quarterback who can make those tackles. So love it. Jimmy, keep it coming.
So have you guys followed at MathBomb with the relative athletic score on Twitter?
Kenneth Platt, right?
Yes, I believe so.
That's his actual name. Yeah,
okay,
awesome. Kenneth Platt.
Shout out
yes.
Kenneth Platt. I just wanted to throw out the guy who has the highest RAS score as a wide receiver, 9.97. Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia. Mountaineer, baby. He was the first West Virginia player to wear number 0. I forget where I found that, but I thought that was interesting too. Just wearing, because I think they just announced they can wear number 0 now, right?
Yeah,
in the NFL. Yes, next year will be
NFL.
0.
So
Marvin Jones is wearing 0 for the Lions.
Calvin Ridley, 0. The first person to say he was going to wear 0.
The amount he's going to bet for the rest of his career for sure. Number 0. Sorry,
you just told me a prospect I have not heard of, so I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So I think it sounds like he's gonna be a mid to late round wide receiver, but there's a lot of depth in this wide receiver room in the draft. I don't know how many wide receivers are exactly like beloved, other than like Jackson Smith. I'm sure he'll go up there, but in terms of draft capital, I'm interested to see where everybody lands. But yeah, he had a 41-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump. 4.38 40-yard dash, 6'3", 220 pounds.
Whoa!
I mean,
beast.
Yeah, I mean that alone is going to get him drafted. We all know how athletic. I mean, I know the Colts drafted all athletic players last year, and the reward is too high because you can't teach that, right?
All right, now I'm going to look into this guy now for sure.
Bryce Ford Wheaton.
One of the things I'm hearing and reading is that really the only consensus, consensus meaning different analysts and different teams have different ideas of first-round wide receivers. The only consensus first-round wide receiver seems to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. And there are some people who like Zay Flowers. There's some people who like Jordan Addison, but this wide receiver class is just, this isn't it. There's more people with consensus tight ends in the first round than wide receivers. So getting a guy who's 6'3", 220 something and runs a 4.38 with a 40+ inch vertical. Oh, wow. Color me intrigued.
Yeah. One more. Mississippi State cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. He has the most career pick sixes in the NCAA ever. So I thought it was just 6. You know, he has 6 pick sixes. I think he has 14 interceptions. I mean, he's kind of the opposite of Joey Porter when you look at it that way. I think he's going to be on one of the later rounds, but I think he could be an interesting day 2, day 3 pick.
What I like about that stat, Jimmy, is defenses today are not the dominant. Like, rarely are you going to hold a team to like 13 points. This is not the Ravens defense of the 2000s. Today's offense is almost impossible to stop completely. You have to slow it down and you have to cause turnovers. That's how you become a great, and you have to get to the quarterback. Like, that's how you don't say, oh, we're going to hold him to 10 points. That's just not realistic. So getting a playmaker, getting a guy who set the record for pick sixes in the Division I, like, that is someone I would want on my defense, even if it's a later round draft pick, to see if he can recreate some of that magic. So I do like that that's a stat that you brought up.
People make fun of like Trayvon Diggs and stuff because he lets up the big plays. But I mean, he makes big plays that change the game entirely. And I think that's like, if you make big plays like that, that's like a 14-point swing sometimes, especially when you have a pick six and you get those interception yards. If you know how to run back on the defensive side of the ball and catch those balls, because most of the time quarterbacks and stuff like that, they're a cornerback for a reason, and it's because they don't have hands. But if these guys have some hands and can move with the wide receiver, that's huge. So
playmaker is a playmaker, regardless what side of the ball they're on.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Good episode.
Stats with Jimmy.
Yeah.
I just like finding stats like that. So
hey, you're the stats guy, man. We have a stats episode. We got to turn it over to you. Just get in the groove. Just feel it. Feeling the flow.
Is that for me? Thank you.
So we are going to our month-long draft coverage is going to continue. Friday, we're going to have team draft needs for every single NFC team. And the Monday, when you're on, Jimmy, we'll do the AFC. So we'll do one top draft need for every single team in the AFC.
Oh, wow.
Could end up being a long episode. We don't care. We're going to get this content out. We're going to do some mock draft stuff closer to the actual draft. And, of course, after the draft, we're going to break down round 1 on that Friday. We're going to give draft grades, the whole 9 yards. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are just over 2 weeks away, guys, from finding out where these players are actually going to land. Any last words from either of you before we wrap up today's show?
I'm just glad the Colts don't have a QB need anymore once they got Gardner Minshew. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see him start this year, the 6th quarterback in a row or 7th or whatever it is. So I think he'll be better than all the other.
That's your answer. You just needed
that. We didn't need it. Yeah, we don't.
You needed Uncle Rico. You got Uncle Rico.
Yeah, we can go to our other needs for pick number 4. We don't need to worry about a quarterback. Come trade with us if you want.
Yeah. I will say there's a lot of speculation about the draft, and there are fan bases just killing each other over who's picking who. But I will say, when it comes to the Lions, I trust Brad Holmes. So whatever he does, I'm on board with it. I'm saying that right now. He's turned this team around, so I trust him. So I'm excited to see what he comes up with.
So if he takes Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, not Will Anderson, and instead of Hendon Hooker later, if he takes Anthony Richardson at 6 or trades up
then
to get him,
I'm going to Miami. I'm going to be a Dolphins fan.
No, all right, we will take you. That is a perfect way to end the show. Thank you.
Dude, what are you talking about?
Don't ruin my segue out here, Jimmy. Anthony's going to be a Dolphins fan.
I'll leave.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening, watching. Like and subscribe if this is your first time here. And if you're just listening, make sure to check out the YouTube. We have a lot of fun. We've still got Easter graphics up, even though it's the day after Easter, but we'll let Anthony get away with that one.
I did that on purpose. I actually did that
Easter weekend plus a day. All right, guys.
I spent a lot of time on it. I had to do it one more time.
I said it was okay. I gave you permission. We're going to have it another day. We will be back on Friday, where, as I mentioned, we were going to do the top draft needs, one for each team from the NFC. And then when we have Jimmy on Monday, we'll do the top draft needs for the AFC as we get ever closer to the 2023 NFL draft. So make sure to stay tuned. Thank you all again. Always a pleasure to do this. My name is Brian McFadden. This has been the Legit Football NFL Podcast. We'll see you Friday.
Thank you, Manny.